Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today we're waking up to another severe weather threat on both sides of the nation. We've got a powerful low pressure system in the Tasman Sea that's channeling a lot of wave activity ashore across the New South Wales coastline. It's also providing some showers and storms across the New South Wales coastline too. We're going to recap on the major cold front that impacted the southwest of Western Australia last night too, and talk about some heavy rainfall up in far north Queensland. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and it'd be much appreciated. We're going to start things off over in New South Wales this morning. You can see the low pressure system in the Tasman Sea at this time. It's a multi-vortex low pressure and it's swirling around a common centre about 400 nautical miles towards the southeast of Lord Howe Island and about 600 nautical miles towards the east of New South Wales. And you can see temperatures are being kept very cool across the New South Wales interior, which we'll get to in just a second. But the waves are the main concern here. I've seen some footage from a couple of channels that are showing wave heights up towards 6 or 7 metres offshore. Most of that was yesterday, and the worst of the storm has passed, but we're still looking at pretty significant wave heights extending as far north as the Sunshine Coast and Fraser Island in Queensland. You can see those waves up there at around 4 metres or so. Offshore from Brisbane, they are a slightly milder 3.5 metres, but once you get into the New South Wales waters, once you go a couple of nautical miles offshore, those wave heights are going to be extreme right the way down towards Wollongong, south of Sydney. You're looking at wave heights of at least 4 or 5 metres across a lot of locations here. And I've seen swells breaking 200 or 300 metres offshore from New South Wales. So this weather event is very extreme indeed. It's certainly the one of once in a year or once twice a year sort of weather event that impacts the New South Wales coastline. So boating, fishing, any shore-based activity not advised at all in a weather event like this. I'm sure that goes without saying. Check the weather before you go out or do any of those shore-based activities, but in a weather event like this, it is literally hazardous to do it and can be life-threatening. You can see the waves do die off over the course of today. They really do fizzle out as this low pressure system weakens and moves further into the Tasman Sea towards New Zealand. And in fact, it becomes a lot more of a shallow low pressure system at about 1,010 millibars later tonight. And you can see those wave heights really waning away by tomorrow morning. The seas will still be quite choppy tomorrow morning and into tomorrow afternoon, but it looks like they will calm down this weekend. You might be able to get a bit of boating in, especially if you do live south of sort of Taree or Coffs Harbour in the northern or the central parts of the New South Wales coastline. You might be able to get a bit of fishing in later on this weekend as those waves really do calm down. In terms of rainfall, really not expecting too much to be around the New South Wales coastline. There is still a few drops that are expected throughout the course of today. You can see a few showers lining the coast between Ulladulla south of Wollongong and as far north as Coffs Harbour and Taree, that sort of area. Kempsey Airport also receiving a little bit of rainfall today. You can see on the rainfall forecast over the next 3 days, the accumulations are minimal to say the least. There will be a few spots picking up potentially 20 or 25 millimetres of rainfall, but the remainder of the New South Wales coastline, and it is coastal based rainfall, it's not penetrating far inland. You can see Sydney expecting around 5 millimetres, Newcastle about 5 to 10 millimetres. They are a little bit wetter up there, and then up towards the peninsula around Taree expecting around the most of New South Wales actually over the next 3 days, about 15 to 20 millimetres there. Lord Howe Island could get a few drops of rainfall today from these low pressure systems as they swirl around in the Tasman Sea, but really not expecting too much in terms of heavy rainfall there, and it's not really worth covering. But yeah, that basically does it for this low pressure system. If I've left anything unanswered, please do let me know in the comment section and I will get back to you as soon as possible. The wave threat will be dying off. The rainfall threat never was a threat. It's the temperature threat that we're going to be talking about next across New South Wales and Victoria. So we're talking about a bit of a frost week, in fact, and we have had the worst of the frost days. I did say that yesterday was going to be the last of the really bad ones for the New South Wales and Victoria interior. You can still see big swathes of below 0 degree temperatures reported last night as far out as Horsam in Victoria up towards Bendigo and Ballarat in Victoria, and then into New South Wales, a big swathe of below 0 temperatures as far out as Broken Hill. They got down to a freezing morning. Canberra was well below freezing last night as well, down to -4 there, so bitterly cold. And the cold temperatures will continue for the highlands, but they are now starting to move out of New South Wales and Victoria as this high pressure system over the top of Tasmania weakens and moves south towards Macquarie Island, south of New Zealand. You can see throughout tomorrow morning there will be a big swathe of below 0 degree temperatures across the highlands of New South Wales and Victoria, but again, not as extreme as what they have been. It still will be really cold, down to -8 or -9 around Cupramara or Thredbo, but not as cold as what it has been, and the temperatures across the agricultural districts of New South Wales and Victoria should remain above 0 for the most part. Not too far above 0. It will still be a very cold morning. You're going to need to rug up, that's for sure, but it's not going to be a big frost day. So the threat has definitely passed for the farmers in this part of New South Wales and Victoria. If you didn't receive frost, then you're not going to be receiving any more frosts, and if you have received severe frosts, there is a chance of another 1 or 2 frost days today and into tomorrow, but again, really not expecting the worst to happen tomorrow morning. It certainly should have passed by now. 4 consecutive severe frost days in a row for Victoria and New South Wales. That certainly is enough frost for a month, let alone a year. So hopefully that is the worst of the really cold weather. And it's also been really cold up into Queensland. I saw a comment yesterday, Strandthorpe in the Granite Belt down towards -4 overnight. And yeah, it will be cold once again. We're looking at below 0 degree temperatures for the highlands around sort of north of Glen Innes and up towards Strandthorpe outside of Brisbane and the Gold Coast in Queensland. But still not as cold as what we're talking about in New South Wales, Victoria, thankfully for them. We're going to keep things on Queensland. We're going to move up to far north Queensland and talk about 10-day rainfall accumulations up there. We're still looking at heavy rainfall for the tropical parts of far north Queensland, a big change from the cold weather that the southern parts of the state are expecting. And you can see here outside of Innisfail and up towards Babinda south of Cairns, looking at up to 100 millimetres of rainfall over the next 10 days. Now that's not enough to flood a drain pipe up in far north Queensland, but still some heavy rainfall here could cause some problems for riverine communities that are at a high risk of flooding on some heavy rainfall. Especially inland communities around Atherton and Ravenshoe. Again, to far north Queensland, they're used to this sort of rainfall, but some heavy rainfall on soil moisture values that are up above 100, or up at 100% right now, could cause some problems in terms of flooding. So we will keep a very close eye on that. And we're also going to be keeping a very close eye on southern Queensland with a bit of rainfall expected in the 5 to 10 day forecast period. So let's show you what rainfall is going to be coming through for the entirety of Queensland right now. There are some showers and the isolated thunderstorm up in far north Queensland that will be continuing throughout the today and into early tomorrow morning. The rainfall will be easing off by Friday afternoon by the looks of things, and you can see it does still continue into this weekend, but it does remain light to moderate at times for the Queensland, for far north Queensland. Again, maybe 20 millimetres expected on Friday and 20 millimetres again on Saturday, on top of the 30 or 40 millimetres that has already been recorded today for parts of far north Queensland. It all does add up, and it can add up very quickly in this part of Australia. Looking at some light to moderate rainfall as well later on this weekend along the central Queensland coastline around the Whitsundays up towards Townsville. Could be seeing a couple of millimetres there before we see this trough develop across the central parts of Queensland towards the western parts of Queensland, over Windarat and south of Longreach. Now this trough here is going to be associated with a cold front that's going to be sweeping through, or a sweeping low pressure system rather, that's going to be sweeping down into the northeastern parts of New South Wales. Now this here typically would scream thunderstorms to me. I'd be calling for severe thunderstorms sometime next week with this kind of setup, but we're still too early into spring. Well, not even in spring yet, but it's still too early for those thunderstorms to start firing up. But we are looking at a low pressure system that could develop over the southeastern corner of Queensland and drop some significant rainfall next Tuesday and Wednesday. However, not really reciprocated amongst the other weather models. The GFS is calling for some rainfall, but nothing in comparison to what the ECMWF and the Access G3 are saying. Typically, if two forecast models say a very similar forecast, like the ECMWF and the Access G3, they're saying something very similar at basically the same time as well, Tuesday and Wednesday next week for southeastern Queensland. I do call for this weather event, but considering it is a brand new addition to the forecast models, I'm not going to be making a detailed forecast yet, but if this does remain on the forecast, then I will be covering it in tomorrow's video. The rainfall does actually ease out of far north Queensland temporarily next weekend, but it does return sometime next weekend. But again, that's looking really long range into the forecast, and it's very hard to make a good forecast more than 5 days out for far north Queensland, and I do not envy the job that the Bureau of Meteorology has for predicting the summer weather patterns this year. And on that, I will be releasing my wet season predictions sometime September, hopefully, maybe into the later parts of September when I get all the data that I can from the NOAA, the Americans. But I will be looking very closely up in far north Queensland because the forecast last year was absolutely terrible, and I want to be working on that because, again, there are lives at stake, and there were lives at stake last wet season. Thankfully, none were lost. But in terms of peak rainfall accumulations, we did talk about far north Queensland. Cairns are not really expecting any good rainfall. I'm only about 10 millimetres there, and it'll only come from a couple of drops or a few drizzly showers. And again, the rainfall not penetrating far inland as well. Mount Carbine remaining dry for the 13th week in a row, and looking at some good rainfall around Innisfail and Tully. That's sort of the only areas that are expecting decent rainfall. The Townsville Rain Dome in full swing. They're not expecting any rainfall either. And over on the Whitsundays too, around Airlie Beach and down towards Bowen and Mackay, expecting a couple of millimetres there. Out in the mountains around, I forget the name of the mountain all the time, Yalbaroo, that's the one. Looking at about 20 millimetres there. A few drops down towards Rockhampton and Agnes Water, a bit of relief from the extreme cold that they've been experiencing over the last couple of days as well. And some good rainfall down in southern Queensland and the northeastern parts of New South Wales. Again, this is going to be very hit and miss on the forecast, so we will be looking at it with great detail tomorrow. Some good rainfall around Moree and Tamworth outside of Lightning Ridge in the northeastern parts of New South Wales, but again, it's going to be very hit and miss by the looks of it. We're going to need to give a proper detailed forecast update tomorrow because I'm not 100% sure yet of what to make of this weather system. We're going to have to watch it very closely, as I've said for the nth time now. And we also have more winter weather to be talking about. Last night, a strong cold front did lash the southwest of Western Australia, and I say lash very loosely because it was very hit and miss in terms of rainfall for some locations. I mean, you know how Townsville has a rain dome, Perth sure did have a rain dome last night. There were a couple of locations in the hills that did pick up 30 to 40 millimetres, 50 millimetres like I did expect. In fact, New Norcia up in the northern parts of the Whitbelt also picked up some good rainfall overnight. So again, it was hit for some locations, but a lot of stations in the Perth metro area didn't even crack 10 millimetres. So it was an awful forecast from the forecast models, and also it was actually a pretty good forecast from the Bureau of Meteorology with their range of uncertainty. It was a difficult front to forecast, but still the southwest Capes got absolutely hammered. And with what rainfall they got, Perth certainly missed out. There will be some more coming through throughout the course of today, especially for the southwest Capes. You can already see some strong showers moving through that area there. Some storms as well expected over the southwest Capes throughout the course of today. There's also some showers coming through for the Perth metro area, but they should ease out by around midday or so. There's going to be contracting to the southern suburbs from about now as well. Some rainfall is expected to continue across the interior parts of Western Australia as well, up into the Murchison and into the Goldfields as well. Some rainfall is expected throughout the course of today there. But again, it's going to be very, not much and quite hit and miss in some locations as well. And by this evening, the majority of the rainfall will be clearing out of the southwest corner and contracting to areas such as Albany across to Esperance. The high-pressure ridge is expected to take its place, this big high-pressure ridge by the looks of it, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And it looks like it's going to be very calm and still across the southwest. In fact, the entirety of the south of Western Australia and even in towards South Australia as well throughout this weekend and into early next week. And this is great news indeed. It means that we're going to be getting some fine days, some sunny, potentially warm days as well, especially Sunday and Monday could get up into the low 20s. Monday, in the head of a cold front, we could be getting up into the low 20s, that's for sure, for parts of the southwest of Western Australia. But it's also going to be keeping the winds very still, very calm indeed. So boating is certainly going to be very good. Fishing, unfortunately, I was looking forward to a little bit of fishing this weekend, but it doesn't look like we're going to get a chance to because those fishing seasons are closed, and that is very unfortunate because this is the best weekend weather forecast that I've seen all year so far, and it's always that time that they close off the fishing seasons. Apparently, a bit of rainfall is expected to come through sometime towards the middle parts of next week. A few showers and storms developing Tuesday evening for the southwest of Western Australia around Augusta up towards communities around Dunsborough and Yallingup, and extending inland towards Busselton and Bunbury. Some good rainfall also expected to extend as far north as the southern suburbs of Perth. The northern suburbs might miss out once again. The rainfall extending into the northern parts of the Wheatbelt on Wednesday night. So again, that could be another 20 millimetres to the rainfall totals for to start things off with August. It certainly looks like we're going to have a dry start to August for the first week or so. The rainfall will continue throughout the later parts of next week. From Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, some showers are expected. But under the influence of a high pressure ridge, things should be kept relatively calm and relatively dry. Later next weekend, however, we've got a big cold front that's going to be coming through to the Perth coast, or the southwest of Western Australia's coastline. This one looks very powerful indeed, and the reason why I'm talking about it is because it was on yesterday's forecast as well. So we're also looking at a high certainty of a big time cold front coming through maybe Sunday or Monday the 11th or 12th of August respectively, and that could be dumping quite a good amount of rainfall across parts of the southwest of Western Australia. 10-day rainfall accumulations over Western Australia, in fact across a lot of the southwest, are pretty miserable. There's only going to be one or two rainfall events over the coming week, one of them next Tuesday and Wednesday with that cold front, and then another one just the showers afterwards. But again, rainfall extending up the coastline to Geraldton isn't going to be too good either, only about 10 millimetres expected there. Down towards Cervantes and Jurien Bay, expecting around 10 to 15 millimetres, maybe 20 in one or two locations. Perth over the next 10 days expecting up to 30 millimetres. It's of course going to be the southern suburbs and communities around Harvey and Dwellingup that pick up the majority of the rainfall, around 50 to 55 millimetres there. And the southwest Capes, which will be under the influence of some thunderstorms or a thunderstorm threat at least on Tuesday afternoon, expecting up to 100 millimetres of rainfall. Unfortunately, inland communities into the wheat belt around Beverley and Brookton not expecting too much rainfall either. There will be some places that pick up some decent falls, but again, not looking too hopeful for some of these locations that are only expecting a very hit and miss 10 to 15 millimetres. And again, when it misses, you'll get absolutely nothing, but when it hits, you could get some good rainfall this far out into the wheat belt around Merredin or Southern Cross. Last night, actually, there were some places around Corrigan extending down towards Lake Grace and Hyden, and as far north as Merredin and Darwin as well. In sort of this corridor here, they did receive some severe thunderstorm activity with large hailstones being reported at a couple of stations, or a couple of farms rather, in this part of Western Australia, and some good rainfall totals as well. In fact, family's property out around Beverley did pick up 25 millimetres, so some good rainfall was reported out there, and it was very widespread for some locations, so farmers will be very happy with that, and that's why some places out in the wheat belt ended up picking up 3 or 4 times as much rainfall as some of the locations on the coast, because this front was a very weird one indeed, and certainly one that was a difficult one to forecast. And when I saw the rainfall dropping on the forecast models, I should have called it and said that there wasn't going to be as much rainfall as expected, but I was just holding out for hope because it was a big cold front that was approaching the southwest. And again, I mean, these cold fronts this year have dumped quite a lot of rainfall. But yeah, once again, the rainfall was reserved for the wheat belt, and it was reserved for the southwest Capes, and Perth did miss out on it once again, and that seems to be a bit of a theme this winter season. Really starting to ramble here about Western Australia, the weather that's happening there. Around the rest of Australia, there is a little bit of rainfall expected across the interior districts. Again, we're going to have to watch that in tomorrow's forecast update. I'm just not sure with it yet. But apart from that, that is all that I have time for this morning. If you haven't already, please do consider subscribing, and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. Your support is greatly appreciated. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and I could not run the show without them, so their support is also greatly appreciated. That is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.